Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Record 662. I'm one of your co hosts, Alyssa Martin, and today we have joining us one of my friends, not just a special guest, but someone who I've come to know pretty well over the last few weeks, actually, like last year or so. We've known
Right.
each other pretty well, but she's also been through a lot over the last couple of months as well, and might have seen her, on some of our teases recently. Miss Delia Steele is joining us today, and you guys have really been through a lot, to say the least, over the last couple of not just weeks, but months and years. Um, let's just jump right into it. Y'all, live in the house that's become quite a spectacle here in the city of Tupelo. I mean, to put it lightly, talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, we've lived there since 2009, and the house is probably more popular at this point with kids today than Elvis. I don't care what anybody says. Like, everybody knows Elvis, but if you're in this area, everybody knows Leigh. Um, Living there has been pretty unique, not knowing what we were getting into, just the everyday life and how people feel like, they want to come, they want to see. It's like a museum that isn't a museum.
Yeah.
So,
And for a town or a city relatively, the size of Tupelo, it's not the biggest city, but it's, not super small. This is a pretty significant cold case that's really rocked our area of Leigh Occhi. If you've been here, really any amount of time recently, you probably heard about the case. She was a young girl who pretty much just vanished, disappeared, was living at the house you and your family now live in. um, Talk about just kind of what this has meant for your family. Kind of how have y'all had to change what y'all do, how y'all move, how y'all live?
well, when we bought the house, we didn't know. So when we found out, that changed me. We were young. It was probably around 2010, 2011. And as a young person who, I think nowadays cold cases and true crimes and things are just really cool to people because it's the thing. When we were growing up, we had unsolved mysteries, and it just kind of sort of terrified you because you heard that theme song come in, and you're like, oh, okay, there's another something that's going on in life that I don't even know exists. So cold cases, true crimes, things like that meant something different to my generation. Um, and I think once we found out at such a young age and how we found out, it changed me. Like, I have no desire to dig into cold cases. I have no desire to watch true crimes. I know everybody loves them, and I stay as far away from them as I can get. Having little children, we're talking newborn, 5 years old, I was terrified to be in my home because for everybody else, it is a cold case about a 13-year-old girl who disappeared and was never found. As a mom living in a home with children, it's about a little girl who disappeared and was never found, and whoever did it is still out there. Whoever did it knows exactly the layout of my home. It wouldn't take much for them to figure out, with our day-to-day coming and going, there's children there now, and one of those children are basically the same age as she was when it all happened. So a lot of people are like, oh, if that was me, if that was me. Yeah, it's not you, it is me. Oh, that, if that happened in my house, it's not an if for us, it did happen in our house. So we were very iffy with social media for a long time, but how do you tell a teenager she can't have TikTok? I mean,
Yeah,
look at how,
especially
like,
today.
yeah, look how the world reacted a
Yeah,
month ago when,
yeah.
when TikTok was gone for just a minute. So we've had to learn different things. We don't really tell people that's our home, but when people let their children come to our house, we make it a point to say, hey, just so you're aware, this is where we live, this is what happened. We don't let them out front unless, I mean, there's not, you're never going to catch a picture where I'm not out there with them. So we've just had to learn we don't go in the front yard. We don't, and that's because people all at all times are driving by, taking pictures, getting out. We've had mediums try to come into our home because they felt like there was an energy there and they needed to get inside, and I mean, if you're not an assertive person, they're going to just walk right past you.
Mhm.
Luckily, I'm overly assertive, so
Yeah.
it doesn't happen, but it would if it was somebody else.
And this is something y'all been dealing with obviously for years, and people can throw their own opinions at you and say, well, you could move, or you could sell your house, or you could do, but it's not that easy.
No,
Y'all have tried that
we
before.
have put our house up, not through not through a realtor, but we've tried to do it ourselves. And we've had a couple of people come look, and then I would just randomly be on social media and be like, oh, here's her house. Here I went and looked. I'm thinking about buying it, but of course they never do. There's the interest to buy the home is not there. The interest to come be, and I mean, the only way to say it is to be nosy.
Yeah.
To say, "Ooh, I've been in her house." If you're that curious, I can show you where the blood splatter was, where the hair was found, the chunks of skin, because we were made aware of that years later. But people aren't coming to buy the home.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is what it is. You have to be very careful.
And talk about over the last, I guess maybe since the beginning of the year, start of January or so, um, what has gone on. We've kind of kept up with it lately with people being out there. You guys had 30 something, almost 40 agents just a couple weeks ago. Maybe things have kind of calmed down a little bit, maybe not. I don't really know that they actually ever do calm down for y'all, but maybe you're getting to finally take a breath since they've kind of left.
A little.
Talk about where things stand now.
We still have what I call drive-bys, people who are all the way from Tishomingo, Iuka. They oh my gosh, they're from everywhere. If we're sitting outside, the tags, we always watch the tags.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that too.
Yes, they
when
still
we came
do.
to interview
They still do. People still they're just curious, and I get that. I mean, I get being curious. Um, and with my issue with that is they're not always just curious. There are always those people who want to push a little further than they should. But since this last time, we like you said, we had 37 agents. They reached out to my husband. They discussed, what their plans were this time, what they wanted to bring in, the reasoning for wanting to come back, and without good reason, we don't have to let them technically on our property. It's our home. We bought and paid for, and of course they could push and eventually get there, but we could always say no. Right, and even with the government agencies, they don't want to fight either. They don't want the pushback, just like a person who's just wanting to walk around my yard doesn't want the pushback. So it becomes a whole thing. We've never said no. Anytime they've called, and it's just been numerous times over the years, we've always agreed to it. We've always allowed them to come do whatever they needed to do. There's a few stipulations in place. Years ago, when our children were smaller and they didn't know what happened in our house, the stipulation was they could only do it during the day when the kids weren't there. So at 3 o'clock every day, they packed it up and we're gone. They've always been really good about doing what we ask in order to be there. So we've always had a really good working relationship with them. And I say we because it's our home, and we have to live amongst the chaos at that time.
So where do things kind of stand now? I know a lot of people still are wondering. People really also just think you can come out and say, oh, well, this is what they found and this is what they're doing. Obviously, right. You can't come out and say anything that's going to hinder us ongoing investigations.
I wish we could, because it would make my life easier. Yeah. The only reason we know what was found is because we had to confirm that it had nothing to do with our lives. That doesn't mean that what was found didn't have to do with the life of someone who was there before us in between the year that it happened, which I think was 92, 93, till we got there in 2009. So there were numerous families in the home between then, like the 8 years or whatever. Or no. Look at me, my math ain't mathing. There were other families there though. So just because it didn't belong to us, that wasn't connected to us, right? So we're not allowed to say. We only were made privy to that information because we had to confirm that it had nothing to do with our family. So if we could say, we would. Just like the things that we should know that, that we shouldn't know that we do, is just because we've always had to kind of cross T's and dot I's, because being there for so long, it could have to do with us, or it could have to do with the case, or again, the other families in between.
And for y'all, I mean, you guys obviously have been really cooperative, like you were saying, letting them come in and be on your property, dig. You, your family, y'all want to see this eventually come to an end and see the case closed and see justice, just like everybody else in Tupelo and around the area.
Absolutely. There was a comment made that it wasn't personal to us because it was personal to the community. I'd like to point out that we have been a part of this community. My husband, his entire life, and I have been in Tupelo since 2002. So I don't know how we're not considered a part of the community. We both live and work in Tupelo more than half of our lives. Then to say that it's not personal to us when we've lived in the home for half of the time that she's been missing. Also, back to having little kids, she's been a part of our family, because when you roll up to Dodge's and your house is on the front of the newspaper and you're 7-year-olds, like, why is our house on the front of the paper? And there's no way around it. Like, you have to start explaining. And I know some people would say, you shouldn't tell your kids when they're at little. You're not in that situation. You don't get to tell me how to tell my don't tell me how to raise my kids. So we made them aware of what was going on as they were old enough to kind of understand. So she's always been a part of our life. She's always been the kid. And we had to explain, like, you look at a 12 or 13-year-old now and they're miniature adults. And a 12 and 13-year-old in the early 90s was very different. To me, that's what I would say probably an 8 or 9-year-old is now. So for me, she's always just been an extra part of our family. We talk about her. We've discussed not the case, because that doesn't, there's nothing we can do to help with that situation. That part doesn't really matter to us. Her being found would be amazing, but regardless, I think she's always going to be a part of who we are, because we've raised them very different because of the situation. So for somebody to say she's not a part of us is insane.
Yeah. And this last time they did, when they were out around y'all's property, there were some new areas or spots they might have dug in. For instance, like maybe the space of the backyard,
all of
it that they dug up. They hadn't done that before. So
no.
It also goes to show that they're committed.
That yes, absolutely,
to follow leads and really wanting this
absolutely done. Over the years, we have known I guess detectives that come in and out, or family members of the detective who say, around Christmas dinners, that's what we talk about, and they're really excited. Like, this is the case that they're focused on right now. And we always get those phone calls. Those usually go to my husband. We get the phone calls though, and they want to come, they want to walk the yard and just see if what they're reading on paper makes sense, the new equipment and things like that. So every time they've come out, the search space has gotten bigger, the equipment's gotten more advanced, more technology. The dogs are smarter, they've gotten better training. They, like, I think these dogs, I don't know if we're supposed to say this, or I don't know if it really matters, but these dogs have been, the last set that came in, they were down in New Orleans with the New Year's thing. They've done a lot of other things. So more, just everything being more advanced than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. So, I mean, there's nothing in my mind that will ever say that they'll just give up. They're looking for something, and they've got their minds made up. So they're going to keep going.
And some people kind of, a lot of people, rumors swirl really easy, especially on social media.
Social media.
A lot of ones that we've seen are what people think led to the most recent search and dig and this and that. But what we know to be true is what y'all have said. And tell us what.
So what we saw on social media was Tupelo Water and Light was out digging, and they found something and had to call them in. Tupelo Water and Light did not come out to dig until the agents called them in. So that is a hard no. Also, they said that something about my upstairs. I don't remember what that rumor was. There was no upstairs. We've never had an upstairs. If we did, we got gypped because we paid
You
a
lost
lot.
half of it.
Yeah, we lost half of our house, and there's
somewhere in the process.
yeah, and she's not buried in the basement because there is no basement. We have had the floors completely ripped out and redone since we've been there. Actually, when we moved in, they were concrete. There wasn't flooring, so that was a lie. But the big one now is Tupelo Water and Light found something, which is 100% not true. Um, they were called out to do the digging once my husband approved them to come back onto the property with new equipment to just what they said they were doing were they just wanted to check everything. They wanted to check all the boxes. They wanted to make sure they weren't missing anything. They wanted to make sure they had used the best equipment possible to get the results they were looking. They want to make sure if they say she's not here, that they know they've done their best. So they were there for the agents, not because they were digging a water line or something. There's nothing to be digging out there.
We could probably talk about myth busting and rumor
all day long
here, but
all day long.
There's a lot that's swirling around.
Of course, it doesn't matter what we say because it's still not going to be true. It's not going to be true because
it's still not going to be
no, you don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea.
Going back to kind of the issue of privacy, I think is what we keep,
it's the biggest issue we have.
And as a homeowner, you do have a right to privacy.
Absolutely.
People can say, okay, well, the house and the address is public knowledge, and it is, but that doesn't mean that you can make it your house,
right?
The general public.
Absolutely. People think because something happened there that they have the right to just be there. You don't, obviously. I mean, my thing is, think about how you would feel if you were at home and you have your children at home and you're like, we'll go with something that's happened since this situation. A couple of days into it, after the interview with Allie and WCBI, my daughter's standing in the kitchen behind me one morning at like 4:30 in the morning. And I turned around and scared me to death because she's always asleep. And I gave her a hug and I thought, she just woke up when I let the dogs out and she was shaking where she's been having bad dreams. The night before she has a cat, so she went to close the window where she had let it up a little so the cat could get some fresh air. And there were people standing in the front yard taking pictures. And she immediately stepped back from the window, couldn't put her window down because she couldn't walk in front of it. So I go in there to tell her good night, and she's like, put my window down, there's people outside, And then she goes to bed that night, and then the next morning she wakes up and she's shaking where she's had bad dreams all night. Because the one place she's supposed to feel safe is at home, but because people feel like our home is their playground, she can't even feel that. So, and the thing is, like, if you're curious about something, just ask. We're not those people, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're just making this about you." We've lived there for 16 years, and we're just now speaking out. Like, we have friends who have known us for years, and are like, we had no idea that was your house. Friends have been to our house. Right. Because we don't go, hey, you're an adult, we live in Leigh Occhi's house. I mean, that's not something we do. Like I said, we tell parents because they're bringing their little children to our home. But outside of that, we don't make that like a thing. Right. So we don't make that a thing. So for me, after 16 years, I think it's time, we're allowed to have a say. And of course, I'm sure when you let this out, there'll be 1,000 people with an opinion. But my thing is just put yourself in our situation. Think of how you would feel if I was standing out front of your home, taking pictures. Those pictures they're not helping the investigation. They're not, I mean, all it is you're wanting to post it. And if you don't post it to social media, you're sending it to your best friend, or oh my gosh, guess where I just was. Like, that doesn't help the investigation.
And you're not going to see anything different.
No, she's not going to come out and wave. She's not going to come out and wave.
I mean, if anything, maybe, the mud has gone back in place over the last few weeks.
I wish. It looks like, if we could have some mud wrestling competitions out there right now. It is awful. And they're not even going to come back to fix our yard. When When the hype has died down again and everybody is back to living their life and everybody's back to doing their thing, we are still in our backyard fighting our 6 rescue dogs to not get in the mud. We're still packing holes because the city is not coming back to fix it until all the rain is gone and everything is dried up. And anybody knows we're going into rainy season. So we're looking at quite a while before they get in a hurry to come fix anything. So when everybody else's life is back to normal-ish, we're still dealing with everything that has happened on top of all the chaos and social media. Social media.
So what happens next? Have you guys heard anything, or is it just kind of?
No, as far as the agents, FBI, NBI, MSU, they're all done. We probably won't hear from them again for a few years unless if something is confirmed with the findings. So if something is confirmed with the findings and they feel that there is a reason for them to come back, they'll reach out. But if nothing happens with that, we probably won't hear from them for a few years. That's how it's been. 3 or 4 years go by, they'll just want to come do a walkthrough. 3 or 4 years go by, they've got new equipment. 3 or 4 years ago, like it's always just that. Yeah, which is another reason you can't sell the house. Nobody wants to buy and deal with that. I don't even know how renting would go for us if we just moved and rented it because one, people don't want to be there. Your renters are not going to want people to come in and out of their, because at that point it's their home. Even if it's still ours, it's their home. Mm-hmm. So I don't even we really don't have a lot of options other than praise the Lord, it is almost paid for.
And there is legally, that information didn't have to be disclosed to y'all.
No, from what we understand, because of the situation, it was not necessary for the realtors, which my husband's he loves his realtors. He says that they didn't know or whatever, and I don't necessarily believe that, but it is what it is. I mean, whether they knew or not, and whether they did or didn't, it was a sale for them, and that's their job, and I get it. I mean, it still bothers me, but I get it. I guess. And then one of the comments on social media was made that, well, we should have just Googled it. Okay, I'm sorry, but I am older than Google. Google is not what it was 20 years ago, what it is today. So if anybody still has a Razor flip phone, I would love for you to Google anything and tell me how that goes. So,
yeah. I mean, who also thinks about Googling?
Yeah, Googling your address. Yeah. So no Google to really to research. Realtors did not have to tell us anything. I guess maybe if we had asked, they would have had to at that point disclose it. But I mean, if an old person passes away in my home, that's the circle of life. I personally believe, hey, there was a kid that was snatched out of your house and they've never found them or the person who did it. That definitely should be something that you should be told. But I'm not the law.
Yeah. Nonetheless.
So, we live there regardless. Yeah. It's ours.
Just to kind of wrap things up, what would you want to tell the community, the public, if you were able to give them one message from you, your family? I mean, obviously this is something y'all still live through, walk through, deal with.
Well, if I said what I want to say, I'd have more enemies. But at the end of the day, the adult thing and the thing that matters is be mindful that you've never been in that situation, and I pray they never are. There is no way to explain what it will do to your mind to know that a child was ripped from the safest place that they were supposed to be in, only to find out that I forgot what I was saying.
I forgot. Okay. Oh yeah. Message to the public.
Right. Okay. So my thing is be mindful and be considerate. Think about, if you were in the situation with your family and your children, with everything that you find out. And again, I hope nobody ever has to find out, because it really does change who you are to know that you're raising your family in a home where somebody else's child was taken and never found. And then it really does something to your mind to know that that person is still out there and now your family is in this home. And not only that, with social media and true crimes, copycats are things. And I hope nobody ever has to experience that. But as best as you can, put yourself in that situation and try to think about how you would feel if it were you and your children. So that's my message. Just try to be considerate, be human. You know, it's easy to say things online and be something online that you're not. Think about being there. Think about if it's you and your 5-year-old in the house, because it was us. While some random weirdos standing outside trying to take pictures.
Yeah, I think you mentioned last time, but now your daughter is around the same age as Leigh Occhi was when
Yes.
she went missing. So even like more personal.
It is, yeah, it's more at the, you know, the forefront now, because you think about her, what she was going through, getting ready to go into the 8th grade. My daughter just went into the 9th grade. Thinking about what type of personality she had versus what my daughter has. Thinking about the life that they said she lived, because there's a lot of things, but it could be speculation as well, because we don't know. But there was a lot of people who always say that she was, she showed up to school with bruises all over her, that she had to sleep on her front porch at night, that she was in a very hostile environment, which I don't know if that's true. I didn't know her. I was 9 years old. I obviously didn't know her. And it's easy for somebody to say something and all of a sudden it becomes true on the internet. So I don't know. But if that was the case, there's, you know, like, what did she go through, what versus what my daughter goes through. And I think being a teenager now is a little bit harder with the internet. So obviously in life in general, but for her, there's so much more to it. You know, when I ask her how it affected her, she's like, I don't want to talk about it. So just be mindful that she's out there. So
hopefully one day we don't, you know, live to see this solved. Maybe your daughter will.
that would be great. That would be great. Not, I mean, for us, for her family, her dad especially. Anybody that has done any research on the case, her dad probably has the most sympathetic following, because he has put so much time and effort into it. So, you know, one day, maybe. I guess we'll see.
Well, thank you for talking with us again. I know it's a lot to have to rehash all of it, and like you said, you're just now starting to kind of be more public and vocal, but I think it's important to share your story and your side of things with
Thank you.
So we appreciate it and look forward to keeping up with you and having you back on.
Thank you.